The gemstone market in 2026 is facing a quiet crisis, one hidden behind polished displays and perfect lighting. Stones once trusted for generations are now shaped by treatments, mass production, and synthetic copies so convincing that even professionals hesitate. Some gems lost value, others lost identity, and a few collapsed under the weight of hype the industry could no longer contain. This video reveals the gemstones experts advise against buying this year, not because they lack beauty, but because the risks surrounding them have become impossible to ignore. If you've ever purchased a gemstone, if you've ever questioned its authenticity, or if you simply want to avoid the mistakes thousands of buyers made last year, watch this list closely, because the stone at number 1 didn't just drop in value, it shattered an entire marketplace. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th, Citrine, the stone that became too perfect for its own good. There is a quiet shift happening in the gemstone world, one that surprises many collectors who believe citrine would always remain a safe, warm, dependable choice. In 2026, however, experts hesitate to recommend it, not because the stone lost its glow, but because its identity no longer matches what buyers think they're purchasing. For years, citrine has been celebrated for its sunshine tones and uplifting presence. But beneath that reputation lies a truth that many owners never question. Most of the citrine sold today isn't natural citrine at all. Instead, it's heat-transformed amethyst, engineered into a flawless, uniform gold that almost no natural specimen can match. This perfection, ironically, has become its downfall. A stone that appears identical in every shop window stops feeling like a gemstone and starts feeling like a manufactured product. This is where the market reaction becomes truly visible. Collectors who once prized citrine's soft amber glow now turn towards stones that carry a sense of individuality. Hessonite garnet, golden beryl, honey quartz. These stones show imperfections, personality, and character. Citrine's mass-produced brightness, by comparison, feels predictable. Even jewelers describe today's supply with a phrase rarely heard in fine gem circles: too consistent to be special. Another factor shaping expert caution is the way citrine is perceived. Among casual buyers, citrine is often thought of as a starter gem, affordable, safe, cheerful. But within the trade, this label works against it. A stone that becomes associated with entry-level jewelry rarely holds its ground when buyers begin seeking depth, rarity, or investment potential. In fact, many gem professionals quietly admit an uncomfortable observation. Most people wouldn't recognize natural citrine, even if it were placed directly in front of them. This disconnect has turned citrine into one of the most misunderstood gemstones in the modern market. And misunderstandings create hesitation. Buyers fear paying for natural quality when they're actually purchasing treated material. Others worry about long-term value when supply appears endless. But here is the question that divides audiences the most, and often sparks fierce debate among collectors. Has citrine been unfairly dismissed because it became common? Or did it become common because buyers never truly valued it to begin with? Some believe citrine deserves far more respect than it gets. Others argue that the market simply corrected a long-standing illusion of rarity. Many viewers who own citrine pieces may feel strongly about either side. Its place on this list is not meant to diminish its warmth or symbolism. Citrine still shines beautifully in the right hands. But in a year when clarity, individuality, and authenticity dominate the gemstone conversation, citrine finds itself standing at a crossroads. There's a truth many find hard to admit. The vast majority of citrines that buyers believe to be natural never actually had that color. The question is, how many people are wearing a citrine without knowing its true nature? Ranked 9th, Blue Topaz, the stone that became the victim of its own popularity. Blue Topaz has long been presented as the dream stone for anyone wanting icy blue brilliance without the cost of aquamarine. Jewelry counters spent years turning it into a symbol of cool elegance, clean, bright, and almost impossibly pristine. But beneath the calm surface of that color lies a shift experts can no longer ignore. In 2026, blue topaz faces one of the most dramatic value corrections in modern gemstone history, and the reasons extend far beyond simple supply and demand. To understand this change, it helps to look at what blue topaz has become in the eyes of the market. The most visually perfect, affordable gem on Earth. Its clarity approaches flawlessness, its color remains uniform from stone to stone, and its price, despite decades of popularity, has barely moved. But perfection comes with a cost. When thousands of stones look identical, buyers stop viewing them as individual gems and start seeing them as interchangeable products. The overwhelming use of irradiation and heat treatment only pushes this perception further. Most blue topaz begins its journey as colorless material, transformed into sky blue, Swiss blue, or London blue through processes invisible to the naked eye. The problem is not the treatment itself, it's the dominance of that treatment. When almost every stone exists because of enhancement, the line between precious gem and engineered commodity becomes razor thin. This is where the conversation gets uncomfortable for collectors. Many have built entire jewelry sets around blue topaz without realizing that natural blue topaz, untreated, unevenly colored, and far rarer, looks nothing like the uniform stones most people wear. Some experts argue that the commercial versions have overshadowed and nearly erased the identity of the natural gem. Others believe the stone's affordability is its strength, and this disagreement often sparks heated debate among buyers who love the stone for its beauty rather than its rarity. But the price stagnation tells a clearer story. While other gems rise or fall based on fashion cycles, blue topaz barely moves. That stability, once seen as a benefit, now signals a lack of momentum. In a collecting world increasingly drawn to authenticity, natural variation, and distinctive character, blue topaz struggles to offer new reasons for buyers to choose it. This leads to a question that splits the gemstone community more sharply than most viewers expect. Is blue topaz undervalued because people take it for granted, or is it valued exactly where it deserves to be? Some argue its treatments make it predictable and therefore less collectible. Others defend it as a beautiful, honest stone that never pretended to be rare. The truth sits somewhere between those two extremes. Blue topaz still shines brilliantly, still cuts beautifully, and still serves as a gateway for new enthusiasts entering the gemstone world. But in 2026, experts hesitate to recommend it, not because it lacks beauty, but because the market surrounding it leaves little room for growth, rarity, or meaningful appreciation. Blue topaz creates a clear divide in the gemstone community. One side believes it is undervalued. The other argues it has never lived up to its hype. Which side are you on? Ranked 8th. Amethyst. A stone shaped by memory more than market. Amethyst has always lived in a space few gemstones can claim, where emotional value often towers above financial worth. Through centuries, it represented sobriety, clarity of mind, and a quiet form of dignity. Throughout homes in America, clusters of amethyst sit on shelves, nightstands, or windowsills, long before the idea of collecting gemstones ever entered the picture. In 2026, however, amethyst holds a place very different from the one its legacy suggests. The shift begins with scale. Massive deposits in South America and Africa have turned amethyst into one of the most abundantly cut gemstones on the planet. Even darker, richly saturated varieties, once considered highly desirable, are now easier to source than buyers expect. As supply expands, scarcity dissolves, and with it, the sense of exclusivity that once made amethyst feel like a treasure. Color, once its strongest weapon, has also become its most complicated battleground. Natural amethyst frequently displays gradients, smoky transitions, or pale flashes that reveal the complexity of its formation. But modern consumers, raised on catalog-perfect photography, expect a color that nature rarely produces, uninterrupted royal purple. To meet this expectation, much of the amethyst circulating today has undergone enhancement. The result is a marketplace flooded with stones whose beauty is uniform, but whose identity is less clear. Value remains stable, but unmoving. For collectors who chase appreciation, amethyst simply cannot keep pace with rarer quartz families or emerging warm-tone favorites. It occupies a category the industry reluctantly describes as everlasting but stagnant, a stone that will never disappear, yet rarely rise. But the deeper reason experts hesitate in 2026 has nothing to do with supply curves or enhancement techniques. It has to do with memory. Amethyst carries a personal history unlike any stone on this list. Many viewers received it as a childhood gift. Many bought a piece during a difficult chapter of life, believing in its calming symbolism. Others still keep a geode discovered decades ago, dust-covered yet cherished. These stories give Amethyst a sense of importance that its current market position cannot support. The gemstone survives on affection long after demand has shifted. And here lies the subtle truth that reshapes its ranking. Amethyst is not a declining stone. It is a remembered stone, a gem preserved in sentiment, protected by nostalgia, and carried forward by the meaning people attach to it, not by its rarity or growth potential. For this reason, Amethyst's place on the list is not a criticism. It is a reflection of a market that prioritizes scarcity, authenticity, and evolution. While amethyst continues to shine strongest in the places where logic does not reach, in memory, in symbolism, and in the personal chapters where it once mattered most. Ranked 7th, dyed quartz. The stone that became a lesson the industry never intended to teach. Dyed quartz entered the gemstone world as a harmless burst of color, bright blues, electric greens, and vivid magentas that nature rarely, if ever, produces. For years, it lived quietly in craft fairs, boutique jewelry stalls, and lower-tier gemstone markets. But in 2026, its position changed dramatically. Experts no longer recommend buying it, not because quartz lacks merit, but because the treatment behind it exposed something deeper about how easily perceptions in this industry can be shaped. Quartz in its natural form is honest, durable, and transparent. It carries the geological story of pressure and heat across millions of years. But once dyed, it becomes something else entirely. A canvas for artificial vibrancy. Dye seeps into microfractures, porous channels, and structural pathways, creating colors that are immediate but unstable. Sunlight, moisture, and even time itself can unravel the transformation, revealing streaks, patches, or washed-out tones where the illusion once lived. This instability is only part of the problem. The greater issue is how dyed quartz is presented. In markets around the world, it is frequently labeled under imaginative trade names: mystic quartz, aqua aura, titanium quartz, creating a sense of rarity where none exists. Some versions aren't quartz at all, but glass or composites designed to mimic quartz-like brilliance. These names blur the line between playful marketing and deliberate misdirection. Behind the scenes, dyed quartz serves another purpose, one the public rarely hears about. It is the industry's testing ground, a material used by certain sellers to measure how far color manipulation can be pushed before customers question authenticity. When buyers accept an unnatural shade without hesitation, this signals how easily similar tactics can be applied to other stones, raising concerns far beyond quartz itself. Dyed quartz isn't just a gemstone. It is a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities of the modern buyer. Anyone seeking lasting value, geological integrity, or stable identity finds little of it here. The stone changes too quickly, reveals too little truth, and depends too heavily on color that was never truly its own. Yet its fall from recommendation status is not dramatic. It is quiet. Dyed quartz slips out of expert lists not with controversy, but with recognition that the boundary between enhancement and illusion has become too thin to navigate responsibly. And this leads to an ending distinct from the others. Dyed quartz remains the gemstone that taught the market an unintended lesson. That color alone can captivate, deceive, and eventually collapse under the weight of its own artificial brilliance. Its place on this list is not about rarity or value. It is about clarity. Clarity in understanding what a gemstone is and what it is not. Ranked 6th, Peridot, the gem that looked tough, until the market looked closer. Peridot has always carried a brightness that set it apart, a vivid green glow born from the mineral olivine, forged deep within the mantle and carried to the surface by a volcanic force. Its color is unmistakable. fresh, bold, almost luminescent. For many collectors, it represented optimism in gemstone form. Yet by 2026, specialists step back from recommending Peridot, not because it lacks beauty, but because the assumptions surrounding it no longer align with what buyers actually receive. At first glance, Peridot appears durable. Its crisp transparency and lively sparkle often give the impression of a stone capable of withstanding everyday wear. But beneath that confident facade lies a structural softness that the public rarely recognizes. With a hardness of 6.5 to 7 on the Mohs scale and a tendency to show abrasion along facet edges, Peridot ages faster than its brightness suggests. Over years, sometimes even months, its surface can lose sharpness, and its polish can show a subtle haze that cannot easily be restored. The situation becomes even more complicated when prices rise. High-quality Peridot from Pakistan and Myanmar commands attention for its velvety green saturation, yet the stone's durability never matches its increasing cost. Collectors describe this mismatch as a luxury shine with a fragile core, a combination that unsettles specialists who want buyers to receive long-term stability, not fleeting radiance. Adding to this tension is the growing presence of synthetic and imitation material. Glass, resin composites, and lab-created simulants can mimic Peridot's bright green hue with surprising accuracy. Casual buyers often struggle to differentiate them, especially when sellers rely on non-standard terminology. This confusion erodes trust, making experts more cautious about recommending a stone that requires careful evaluation at every step. But the real shift in 2026 comes from a change in perspective, a realization spreading quietly through the gemstone community. Peridot was never meant to behave like the durable, everyday gemstone people assumed it was. It was admired for its color. It was chosen for its energy. It was celebrated for its origin. But it was never built for long-term wear or investment growth. This is the perspective flip trigger embedded in this chapter. The idea that the public viewed Peridot as stronger than it truly is. And when perception breaks away from reality, expectations collapse. Peridot remains captivating, with a green that feels alive even in low light. It still holds sentimental and symbolic value for many buyers. But in 2026, experts no longer recommend it widely, not out of dismissal, but out of understanding. They recognize a truth that reshapes its place on this list. Peridot's greatest challenge is not its rarity, nor its treatments, nor its price, but the belief that it could be something it was never meant to be. Ranked 5th, Lapis Lazuli, the iconic blue gem caught in a crisis of authenticity. Few gemstones carry the weight of history the way Lapis Lazuli does. For more than 6 millennia, this ultramarine stone shaped the identity of civilizations. Its pigment-colored ancient murals illuminated sacred manuscripts and adorned the regalia of kings. Even today, its deep blue is instantly recognizable, a color associated with wisdom, royalty, and timeless craftsmanship. But in 2026, Lapis is no longer challenged by rarity or beauty. Its greatest challenge is authenticity. True, high-quality lapis shows a balanced mixture of saturated royal blue and delicate pyrite flecks that shimmer like stars scattered across a night sky. This harmony is rare, far rarer than the market suggests. Yet most buyers only encounter the commercial grades, dull grayish blues, overly spotted matrix patterns, or material so heavily processed that its natural identity is nearly erased. Treatments have become widespread. Many pieces are dyed to achieve an artificial intensity that nature cannot replicate. Others are stabilized with polymers or reconstructed from smaller fragments, pressed and bonded to imitate natural texture. Some versions aren't lapis at all, but howlite, sodalite, or composite mixes designed to mimic the famed Afghan material. These imitations travel through global markets under vague labels, clouding the distinction between what is genuine and what is manufactured. The result is a level of uncertainty that makes lapis uniquely risky for buyers in 2026. Without specialized training, it is nearly impossible for casual collectors to distinguish untreated material from dyed or reconstructed counterparts. Even experienced jewelers sometimes rely on solvents, magnification, or laboratory tests to confirm what they are holding. For a stone so deeply tied to cultural heritage, this erosion of trust cuts deeper than a price drop or fashion shift ever could. The market conditions amplify the problem. Political instability in Afghanistan, the historic and most revered source, makes high-quality material rare, expensive, and inconsistent. As availability shrinks, demand rises, and sellers seeking profit turn increasingly to treated alternatives to fill the gap. The disconnect between expectation and reality grows wider each year. This is where Lapis finds its place on expert caution lists, not because it lacks beauty, not because it lost relevance, but because the uncertainty surrounding it overshadowed everything else. Lapis lazuli remains one of the world's most meaningful gemstones, a bridge between ancient craftsmanship and modern appreciation. Yet in 2026, its value is no longer measured only by color, symbolism, or history, but by whether its story can still be trusted. And for a stone built on prestige and legacy, there is no vulnerability greater than doubt. Ranked fourth, opalite, the stone that was never a stone at all. Opalite is one of the most visually striking materials to enter the jewelry market. Glassy, glowing, and immediately eye-catching. Its milky body carries an electric sheen that shifts under light, giving it a mystical presence that many buyers associate with moonstone or opal. Yet in 2026, experts no longer recommend buying opalite for one simple but significant reason. It was never a natural gemstone to begin with. Unlike minerals shaped through geological time, opalite is created in factories. It begins as industrial glass infused with metallic oxides, engineered for vibrancy and uniformity. This gives it a glow that feels magical at first glance, but also reveals a truth that many buyers never hear. Opalite has no natural origin, no mineral structure, and no geological story behind it. The confusion surrounding opalite didn't happen by accident. Its soft, luminous appearance resembles moonstone just enough for inexperienced buyers to assume a connection. Some sellers use that resemblance to market it under vague names like opalite moonstone, sea opal, or frosted opal. These labels don't explicitly lie, but they blur the line between art glass and authentic gemstones so effectively that millions of people now believe opalite comes from the earth. This confusion creates problems far beyond mislabeling. When buyers compare opalite's intense glow with the subtle sheen of natural moonstone, they often assume the genuine mineral is inferior. When they expect perfect clarity, they misunderstand the layered structure that makes real feldspar unique. Over time, opalite reshapes the public's perception of what moonstone, and even opal, should look like. From a durability standpoint, opalite also struggles to justify long-term wear. Industrial glass scratches easily, chips along edges, and can dull faster than natural gemstones. In jewelry settings, especially rings and bracelets, it often shows signs of wear far sooner than buyers expect. For collectors who value longevity, this lack of resilience makes opalite a difficult choice. But the deeper issue, the one professionals pay closest attention to, is how effortlessly opalite can impersonate authenticity. It doesn't merely imitate a gemstone, it replaces people's expectations of one. Buyers who later discover the truth often feel misled, even when the price was low. That emotional disconnect can damage trust in other stones and in the industry itself. Opalite remains beautiful, decorative, and expressive. It shines brightly in certain types of fashion jewelry and artistic design. But as a gemstone purchase, something meant to hold meaning, value, or lasting identity, it falls short of the standards collectors rely on. And that is why, in 2026, experts step away from recommending opalite. Not because it lacks charm, but because its charm comes from an illusion, one so convincing that it changed what people believed a gemstone should be. Ranked third, low-grade turquoise, the stone that lost its identity before anyone noticed. Turquoise is one of the oldest gemstones in human history, a stone worn by ancient civilizations, warriors, kings, and nomads across deserts and mountains. Its sky blue color embodied protection, guidance, and spiritual presence. But in 2026, the turquoise found in most jewelry counters no longer resembles the material that built its legacy. Specialists today step back from recommending low-grade turquoise not because the stone lost significance, but because its identity has fractured into versions that no longer share the same truth. At the heart of the issue is stabilization, a process once used sparingly to reinforce fragile turquoise. Over time, commercial markets expanded the technique far beyond simple support. Resin fills fractures, darkens outlines, boosts polish, and creates a density the rough stone never naturally possessed. In many cases, the resulting turquoise looks better than the original, brighter, smoother, deceptively perfect. But as perfection increases, authenticity fades. Dyeing introduces another layer of complexity. Natural turquoise rarely displays an intense uniform blue, yet stabilized and dyed versions saturate the market with hues so strong they override the stone's natural texture. Many buyers now associate turquoise with colors that do not actually exist in high-grade material. When real specimens appear, with softer blue, matrix patterns, and organic variation, they are mistakenly seen as inferior. Then comes the most controversial form, reconstituted turquoise. This material is created by grinding low-grade fragments into powder, mixing them with resin, and pressing them into solid blocks. The result, a product that is technically based on turquoise, but no longer a gemstone in the traditional sense. These blocks are carved, polished, and sold as turquoise, often without disclosure. For collectors, this is where the purity conflict becomes unavoidable. Because once a stone can be broken, rebuilt, recolored, and reshaped, how much of it is still considered turquoise? This question defines the conflict at the center of low-grade material. Not a conflict of rarity, but of identity. Buyers expect an ancient stone, yet often receive a modern composite. They expect the unpredictability of geological time, yet see colors engineered to perfection. They expect authenticity, yet encounter versions stabilized, dyed, or reconstructed so thoroughly that even experienced eyes hesitate. High-grade natural turquoise still exists, found in rare pockets across the American Southwest, Iran, and parts of China. But its scarcity, price, and limited accessibility make it a different category entirely. One low-grade material cannot represent, and that is why, in 2026, experts no longer recommend buying stabilized, dyed, or reconstituted turquoise. Not because the color is wrong or the craftsmanship poor, but because the versions most widely sold today drift so far from the stone's original nature that they no longer tell the story turquoise was meant to tell. Ranked second, treated rubies, lead glass filled, the gem that lost trust faster than it lost value. Rubies have always embodied power. For centuries, the gemstones symbolize vitality, wealth, and the intensity of human passion. Natural, high-quality ruby remains one of the rarest and most coveted stones in the world. But the ruby that dominates global markets today, the one most buyers unknowingly encounter, is not the same stone carried by royalty or preserved in museum collections. This modern version is something else entirely. Lead glass-filled ruby. The process begins with low-grade corundum riddled with fractures, too opaque and too brittle to be cut into jewelry. To salvage this material, it is heated with lead-based glass, which melts and flows into the cracks, transforming an otherwise worthless fragment into something that appears clear, vibrant, and deceptively luxurious. Under bright lighting, the result can look astonishing, almost indistinguishable from high-value ruby to the untrained eye. But the transformation comes at a cost. A stone that looks solid is, in reality, held together by glass. This hybrid structure changes everything. While natural ruby can withstand generations of wear, lead glass-filled ruby is fragile. A sudden temperature change, accidental impact, or even mild exposure to chemicals can cause the filling to cloud, fracture, or leak. What once looked brilliant can deteriorate almost instantly, revealing fractures the treatment once concealed. The issue deepens with disclosure. Not all sellers clearly identify treated rubies. Some describe them simply as enhanced, a term far too vague for a process that radically alters durability, identity, and value. Buyers who believe they are acquiring a long-lasting gemstone often discover the truth only after the stone is damaged or appraised. This erosion of trust has reshaped the ruby market. Jewelers face disputes when clients return with stones that have suddenly turned cloudy. Appraisers encounter pieces that cannot be valued because the glass content varies from stone to stone. Collectors realize the ruby they purchased has little resale potential, and experienced gemologists now regard lead glass-filled ruby not as a gemstone category, but as a fragile composite with a short lifespan. This is where the emotional impact emerges. Rubies, once a symbol of permanence and strength, now represent one of the most dramatic collapses of trust in the gemstone world. The treatment does not merely improve clarity, it masks weaknesses that would otherwise render the stone unsellable. Buyers expecting longevity instead receive a gem that may not survive the decade. Natural ruby remains extraordinary, rare, resilient, and historically revered. But the version most visible in markets today cannot carry the same legacy. In 2026, experts pull back from recommending lead glass-filled rubies for a single unavoidable reason. A gemstone meant to symbolize endurance should never depend on glass to hold itself together. In first place, Moldavite, the stone that rose too fast and fell even faster. Moldavite was never meant to become a global sensation. Formed 15 million years ago from the impact of a meteorite in what is now Central Europe, it carried a story unlike any other gemstone. A story of heat so violent it reshaped the earth, a story of glass born from cosmic collision. For decades, it remained a niche collectible among mineral enthusiasts, until the world discovered it. Between 2019 and 2022, Moldavite experienced one of the most dramatic gemstone booms in modern history. Influencers, metaphysical communities, and speculative buyers propelled it from quiet obscurity to international obsession. Prices tripled, supplies evaporated, entire regions were stripped of remaining deposits. What had once been a geological curiosity became the symbol of a spiritual awakening and the perfect target for counterfeiters. Then the bubble burst. By 2026, Moldavite faces a problem far more severe than scarcity: credibility. Authentic Moldavite comes only from a few recognized localities in the Czech Republic, all of which are tightly monitored and nearly exhausted. Yet marketplaces overflow with Moldavite sourced from factories in China, North Africa, and Southeast Asia. Pieces shaped by hand, molded in kilns, or blended with industrial glass to imitate the signature bottle green texture. Some counterfeits are crude, others are disturbingly convincing. This influx of imitation material changed Moldavite's identity. Buyers who once felt connected to a cosmic event now question every piece they see. Sellers who built reputations on spiritual symbolism struggle to explain why supply seems endless, despite mines running dry. The trust surrounding the stone, once its strongest emotional anchor, has fractured. But the crisis runs deeper than authenticity. Moldavite's surge attracted buyers seeking meaning, transformation, and rarity. What they received instead was a market shaped by speculation and emotion, two forces that collapsed quickly. When prices corrected, many collectors found that pieces purchased at peak hype now hold a fraction of their former value. Meanwhile, genuine Moldavite, already rare, became even harder to authenticate due to the sheer volume of counterfeits. This is the core of the market bubble fallout. A stone elevated not by geology, but by belief, and undone by the very enthusiasm that made it famous. The tragedy of Moldavite is not the stone itself. It remains a remarkable tektite with a history written in cosmic fire. The tragedy lies in how quickly its narrative was reshaped by commercial pressure, spiritual marketing, and a global appetite for meaning during uncertain years. And now in 2026, Moldavite stands as a quiet reminder of what happens when a gemstone becomes a trend. Its price no longer reflects rarity, its marketplace no longer reflects truth, and its story, once defined by a meteorite impact, is now overshadowed by the aftermath of human impact. Moldavite did not fail. It simply could not survive the world's demand to make it more than it truly was. The gemstones on this list didn't fall because they lost beauty. They fell because the truth behind them finally became impossible to ignore. Treatments, imitations, and hype reshaped their reputation faster than the market could correct it. Yet even now, many collectors refuse to accept how much has changed. or how deeply these stones divided the gemstone world. What remains is a debate the industry can't avoid, and a conversation that's only getting sharper.